Hey everyone, I'm Scott Stokely, and I am here with Mark Banghart. And Mark has been, well, you've been alive more years than me, is it okay to say?
It's okay to say.
Okay.
67.
67.
Just to put the number out there.
60. You are 67.
I am 67.
Okay, he's 67 years old. And Mark played his first competitive flying disc tournament in 1990 what?
71.
1991?
1971.
71.
71.
1971. The sport has been around a long time. 1971, depending on the version, it's 4 to 5 years before the first permanent disc golf course, Frisbee golf at the time, got put into the ground.
Yeah.
Because Frisbee golf was just one of the Frisbee games that evolved from your generation of players.
Yeah. Throwing at trees, throwing at posts.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to talk about, we'll talk a little bit about Frisbee golf. Don't click off disc golfers. But let's go before then, because
Okay.
the origin of our sport came from flying disc sports. We call them Frisbee
Right.
sports because Whammo made most of the discs, but they really should be called flying disc sports, right?
They should be. I call them Frisbee sports.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
for
old
sure.
school and that's what we called them.
You know, I still to this day call disc golf Frisbee golf, and I get dirty looks from like the new generation of players, but then they kind of, they
Well-
can't say anything because it's me. I'm allowed.
I have shifted to disc golf, and so I'm trying to keep up. But
You know what I do? I actually refer to it. I always call it disc golf, unless it's in the context of it's fun. So,
Right,
like
okay,
for instance,
sure.
it got a little tense during the round earlier today, and someone apologized, and I said we're just playing Frisbee golf with my friends.
yeah,
So that's the way I call it. That's a different spirit.
it absolutely, that's what it does. It changes the spirit
It
of
is.
the play.
It is. All right, so 1971. I'm going to give a little background, but we're going to mostly talk
Okay.
about you in the sport. But you competed in a sport called Guts. Now,
Correct.
Guts was the first flying disc sport ever. It was created in, I believe, 51?
57.
57, okay. So it was the 50s. It's all a blur at this point.
Yeah.
It was created in the 50s by the Healy brothers, a couple brothers in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, who had a birthday party, and they invented this game where they threw a flying disc at each other. I don't even know if it was Frisbees. Was it?
I couldn't, probably couldn't have been.
No, it couldn't have been. No,
They
wasn't.
didn't have them
Was it
back then.
Pluto Platter?
It wasn't a Frisbee.
Okay, well,
I don't believe it was a Frisbee.
okay, so they threw a flying disc at each other,
Right.
at groups of people, and there was probably some drinking involved, and it was a birthday party in the UP. And then they came back the next year, did it again, next year did it again, eventually named it the International Frisbee Tournament,
Right. The IFT.
the IFT,
as we
the
all know it.
oldest flying disc tournament in our sport.
It's been going on continuously since 57, minus the COVID years.
Yeah, COVID is streaks were not broken when it didn't happen during COVID.
I agree. Yep.
So that doesn't
Yeah.
count.
And we had a player that has had 50 straight years of IFTs.
Are you serious?
Yeah, Dan Thornton is.
Wait, Dan, I know Dan Thornton.
Okay.
Yeah, Dan Thornton from it's Ohio. No,
He's over the Detroit area.
Detroit. Wasn't he in Ohio?
I don't think so. He came from the UP and then is now
I
in
think
Detroit.
I know Dan. But
Anyway.
so the game
50 straight IFTs.
50 straight IFTs. That's insane.
That is insane.
And so the game of Guts evolved. Why don't you take it? How is Guts played?
Well, Guts is played with typically 5 players on a team. You can play with 3, you can play with 1 on 1. The 5 players stand fingertip to fingertip when they're on the line. And then the opposing team is, at this point, 14 meters away, which is 45 feet 11 inches.
So
We went
45
meters.
feet, close.
Close, yeah, very close. And the object is to throw the disc. You've got to throw within the reach of the opposing team when you throw it. And the disc has to be thrown so that it's not vertical or upside down. So it's got to be top side up. And it's got to come in above the line that the players are standing in front of. And it's got to come in within the reach above the head, or to the outside of the outside players on this line. But it can be thrown in any fashion that you want to throw it to get it legally to the line. The disc has to be caught with one hand, and it can't contact any 2 parts of the body. So you can't
At
hit
the
it
same time.
At the same time. So you can't hit it with the arm and the chest to knock it up. You can't hit it. You can't have it on your body and knock it up off your chest with your hand. If it's touching the chest, you can't hit it with the hand at the same time. Even a bent arm like this to knock the disc in the air, if it hits like this, is considered two parts. You can flatten it out, and now it's one. The disc is caught with one hand, and if you catch it cleanly off the initial throw, we'd call that a bag, which is what you want to do, just to get in the heads of the people throwing at you. The point is scored by throwing a disc that can't be caught. There's no point given for a catch. Simply the person catching it has it to throw back. And if the team drops the disc, by the way, you can also bobble it. So if once it hits somebody's hand, somebody else can keep it up in the air to keep it alive before it hits the ground. So there's a lot of team movement involved, with the ends cutting back and what we call the whips, the second player's in, usually diving forward. And as long as you finally make a catch, the person who catches it throws it back. If you don't catch it, the first person to contact the disc throws the disc back.
Right. Yeah. So imagine they're not golf discs.
Oh, they're not golf
They're
discs.
not golf discs.
About 110 grams.
Right. So imagine as fast as you see a player throwing a golf disc, the speed-wise, except it's thrown a little bit faster because it's 110 gram disc. You can generate a little more speed, but in the ballpark. So we're saying a powerful golf drive from 45 feet away, flying at your face. Actually, that's not even the best throw. There's other places, but it's flying. It's flying at you at 70.
It's been thrown at 95 miles an hour.
Up to 95. Right. I was going to say at the highest level, 70 plus is
70 plus is a
very competitive throw.
Yes.
But this is like baseball. If it comes in 75 miles an hour, but it's not moving and it's flying straight, I wouldn't say it's routine, but it's, that's not a good throw at the highest level.
The top teams will either bag that shot or it'll be up for an easy bobble catch.
So it's 75 miles an hour
movement
with movement.
Well, and so there are half a dozen throws that somebody might throw. I mean, you've got the backhand, which a lot of people throw. You've got what I call a forehand, a two-finger, a lot of people call it. There's what's called a fish hook, where I wish I had a disc with me, and I should have brought one out there, but you turn it so your thumb's inside, kind of like you would throw a
grenade.
Right. And you throw it with a down angle, and it turns and comes in with a lot of swoop to it. There's a thumber, where you put the thumb inside and you throw it kind of like a baseball.
Not
the thumber, not a disc golf thumber.
Traditional thumber, which was, thrown like a sidearm, but with your thumb instead of two fingers in the rim.
Yeah, and which has a lot of movement to the shot.
Yeah, the thumber, if you're right-handed, if the viewer, that disc comes out here and then it bombs left. It's ugly.
And then there's a shot that very few people throw, but you put the thumb in it and you throw it like this, and it's called a staker.
Yeah, stake. I was gonna say. I didn't know if you guys called it staker also.
We call it a staker.
We called it a staker in DDC.
And except my son throws one, which has tremendous spin, and is about as fast as anybody's throwing. And it tends not to do what you're expecting it to do. Sometimes it just flies straight. Sometimes it drops 2 or 3 feet as it comes in. It's probably the toughest shot right now that anybody's got in the game.
Yeah. So that's the game. It's called Guts because it takes guts. Well, I don't know if that's where the game came from.
I think it is, but they could have called it stupidity, idiocy. I mean, standing in front of some of those shots is, it
hurts. It hurts. Like
it can.
If you soak one, catch it clean, it's like it sucks.
You can get bruising here, but I got a finger with 3 pins in it. And came from a shot. So.
And keep in mind that it's not one throw; it's a weekend full of throws. Take your hand, get your hand. Now, what about gloves? Because some players wear gloves, but there's some old school players that don't, and will make fun of the glove wearers.
Yeah, there's a lot less making fun of the glove players, as we who learned the sport without playing with gloves get older, and we feel it a little more in the hands. So we're beginning to transition to gloves. And a lot of the newer players wear gloves. But when they get real excited and something happens, it's not uncommon to see them just throw the gloves off and throw them away and just dig in for the next shot.
Gotcha. And guts, unlike disc golf, isn't what you call a gentleman's game. There's trash talking.
There is trash talking. It got a little excessive for a while. We're beginning to clean up little bit of it.
Okay.
Which is good, I think, because we've got a lot of kids that are coming into the sport,
Right.
and it was what's the term I want to use? We'll just say juicy for a while.
Right.
It just
It
for
was.
lack of a better term.
All right, so you went to the World Guts Championships, or Guts and Ultimate. No, yes?
Yes, I went to the WUGC, which is the World Ultimate and Guts Championships.
And that was 72.
No, the IFT.
So the IFT
The
was in
IFTs,
72.
yeah,
Okay,
and,
gotcha.
and they didn't. I'm not sure they had a WUGC, World Ultimate and Guts Championships. I don't know when those first started. It certainly would not have been. I mean, Ultimate was not that large a sport. And I started Ultimate in playing in 72 probably, or maybe 73.
It wasn't around much longer than that.
Well, it's 68 it started.
Was it 68? Yeah.
And
But started doesn't mean it started like, every college in the country had one.
It started at Columbia High School in New Jersey in 68. That's when they invented it.
Right. So in other words,
And
it started,
right.
it hadn't taken over.
Until they graduated and went to various colleges and then started promoting it at the colleges. That's when it really picked up.
That's when Dan Roddick discovered it at Rutgers, right?
Yes. And Shalom Simon, who played on the Columbia High School team, came to Michigan State. And I met him there and started playing with the MSU team. I think it might have been 73 or 4. And played with them until I left for the Army.
And the thing I want people to understand, this is the origin of disc golf.
Oh, yeah.
Strange as that sounds, because it was the origin of people playing with flying discs.
Yeah.
And then they liked playing with flying discs, and they said, well, Guts is a cool game, Ultimate's a cool game, what other games can we invent? Well, let's see who can throw it the farthest. Okay, so distance was invented. And
Distance and accuracy, maximum time aloft,
Yeah,
throw,
so-
run, and catch. Those were all events in the tournament series that we would play.
And then Frisbee golf was just another Frisbee
Another
game.
event. Yeah.
And I think in the early days there wasn't even y'all didn't know that Frisbee golf would be the game that would win out.
No. In 76, I went to the Octet, so there were 8.
The Octet
Sounds like-
in Virginia.
No, the Octet was in
Virginia,
New Jersey.
New Jersey, I'm sorry.
Right, yeah, New Jersey. And we played disc golf, but most of the targets was chicken wire around a tree or something. I mean, it wasn't, they weren't baskets.
No. And that was what year?
76.
So even in 76.
Yeah.
Well, that's when they only first started mass producing baskets, because the first few were wire, they would bend them with wires and...
There were a variety of different, Well, it was fortunately patented. Developed and patented, so...
Ed. Yeah, Ed, and that was
Ed,
for better or for worse. I mean, no, it's
okay.
great the baskets were created. I'm saying for better or worse that it was Ed. It took an aggressive businessman to go promote the sport, but
we are where we are.
It's a double-edged sword.
We are where we are, and he had a big hand in it.
Correct.
So if it's if you have to break eggs to make an omelet, and you end up with a pretty good omelet, let's thank the person breaking the eggs. I guess.
That's a great expression. Yeah, I knew Ed very well, and
yeah, I did too.
Okay, so you know.
I know.
We'll turn the camera off and share some stories. but he also gets the credit.
He gets the credit.
He
yes.
never doesn't get credit for what he did.
Yep.
All right, so you went to the 72. You did not win.
Did not win.
You finished second place too.
In 71, we finished second place.
Oh, 71.
But I went in 72 also and played right up. I did win it in 76.
So you won the World Championships in 1976.
Yeah, along with the air races.
Okay, now that was that at the Rose Bowl?
No, we won. The IFT was considered the World Championships.
Okay, so that was...
We did go to the Rose Bowl. Because we won the IFT, we won one of the trips to the Rose Bowl.
Now, was this at a time where your trip was paid for?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was actually a time where they would fly you out.
They flew us out. Yeah, 75 and 76, I was invited out to the Rose Bowl.
Now, this is what's fascinating about this time that I find so colorful is that even then there were people in pockets around the world, but a lot of in the U.S. and Canada a little bit.
Yeah.
But there were pockets of people that didn't even really know what other people were doing, or that other people were doing it, or they had read about you in a newsletter. Yeah. But they didn't know who you were. You just saw the name Victor Malafronte, John Kirkland, Joe Youngman.
Well, they were all Guts players though, and so those names we knew who each of us knew
within the Guts
within the Guts community because of the Guts community. At that point,
I got you.
It really was the Guts community that until freestyle became and which developed and became much more of a thing of its own. And so there was a huge freestyle community.
Gotcha.
But all the freestylers were Guts players. Many of the freestylers were Guts players. Not all, but a good number of them. In fact, Guts players at the time really did all of the different sports. I mean, we were distance throwers, maximum time aloft, throw, run, and catch.
You had to, because most of the tournaments were multi-event.
Many of them were, yeah. And almost every tournament had an event that earned points to get to the Rose Bowl. So that was kind of the series of tournaments that we had through the year.
And that was through the IFA.
Yes, that was through the IFA. And there were some all-around tournaments also, such as the Octet, where you got points for each event, and then the overall top point getters would earn trips.
So you went out in '76, but were most of the players out there players that you had you knew the Guts players
I knew most of them. There were players. There were some Ultimate players that I wasn't familiar with because I was on the Ultimate All-Star team also at the World Championships.
Okay.
So I played from MSU. I played on the West All-Star team. I mean, that's where Ultimate was at the time. That Michigan was in the West.
Because there was so much on the East Coast.
There was so much on the East Coast. And
okay, that makes sense.
Far less on the West Coast. Now Michigan, of course, is East, and there's a whole lot of Ultimate on the West Coast. Top-notch Ultimate on the West Coast.
So when you went out to the Rose Bowl the first year, so we're talking about the Rose Bowl. It wasn't packed, but there were a lot of people there.
There were 15,000 people there.
15,000 people in the stands.
Watching this.
And, a lot of people, in some versions of the sport have thought that the sport peaked like in the mid to late 70s and then dipped and then didn't.
Guts did for sure. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Freestyle, Ultimate, of course, golf, they all really took off.
Right.
Guts had quite a lull in the 80s and 90s.
Gotcha.
And then there was a reunion tournament in 2004 that was put together, and that brought a lot of old players back with their kids. Mine, for example, I brought a friend of my boys, and two of my three boys came out then, and eventually all three of them started playing Guts with me.
Yeah, and you guys all played Guts, your whole family.
All three of my boys and I were part of the 2008 team that won the World Championships at the World Ultimate Guts Championships.
Hold on, so you hear this. So you won the World Guts Championships, and then you came back 10 years later.
I came back 30 years later to win. I won the IFT in '76, and
30
years later won it again in 2006 with my three sons.
That's mind-boggling. That just had to okay, be honest. Did you cry?
I did not cry. I don't cry a lot.
Okay.
But let me tell you, when I think about it,
what a great story.
I might tear up a little bit. Truth be told.
No, I mean and all three of them.
All three of them, and they're all three spectacular Guts players. I mean, we're talking really Hall of Fame level when the time comes. When they're old enough to be inducted in, I'm looking forward to standing up there and shaking their hands.
Yeah. Now, so when
they're
you're
really good.
So Guts has, like a lot of the sports has ups and downs. There was not a resurgence, a new surgence in Taiwan.
Oh yeah, and Japan, and they've got some spectacular Guts being played out there. Right. And in the finals, we beat the Japanese. In fact, we beat a team in 2008 that hadn't lost in hundreds of tournaments. I mean, they thought themselves invincible.
Had they played the top U.S. teams, or were they?
They had
winning
not,
tournaments?
but well, in previous WGCs and the like, I mean, they were a top level team.
this was
And let me tell you,
from Japan or Taiwan?
from Japan.
Okay.
And Catan is the name of the team.
Okay.
And we had a particularly good tournament, and then they came back and beat us in 2012 in Japan, and then we beat them again in 2016 with what we kind of called the dream team of players that were put together in Guts.
Gotcha.
And
your team was much older than them. They were younger players, right?
they were younger players, yeah. But one of my sons was on the team in 2016 when they won in England.
Okay.
So we went to Vancouver,
Gotcha.
we went to Osaka in Japan, and then we were in London in 2016.
Gotcha. Now, you also played competitive, very high level ultimate.
There's something written up, and I didn't know about this, but my number was retired from MSU, Michigan State.
Oh, yeah?
Retired my number 10, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was selected as an Ultimate All-Star from our regionals, so I played at the World Championships in Ultimate. And I've been nominated to the Ultimate Hall of Fame. It's not getting in there.
You're not getting in.
No, well, I didn't play enough years and win enough tournaments. You got to win, and you should have at least some history of winning major tournaments. And I joined the Army just before the the national championships. MSU went there, and I was a real good player. I mean, I was a top player in the world at the time. But to get in the Hall of Fame, I'm pleased with the nomination. I mean,
Gotcha.
that makes me feel good.
All right, so let's talk about Frisbee golf.
Frisbee golf.
So when did you first get exposed? Well, you said you played.
We played when that was in '76. It was an event at the Octet, but I was throwing pro model. I was throwing the pro model. I think the same
Right.
thing we played. I might have been throwing the 119 gram. I know in the Rose Bowl we were throwing the 119 gram
Gotcha.
flat top disc that was retooled from the pro.
Right, which is the 40 mold.
Right, and they had the 100. They had the 119 and the 139. What was one?
There was
the
a
141.
The 141 was
the
the
141.
That was the 50 mold.
Yeah, and so we were toggling between those two discs. That was the type of disc being played, right there. Then when I got back home, I got some lightning discs and was throwing those at posts at the park.
Yeah,
that I lived.
that's such a game changer, right?
Yeah, I mean it was something. Yeah, it was. Well, we threw the 119G. We were throwing that. I threw it 356 feet in the Rose Bowl.
Okay, a 119. Go to a Walmart. There's a disc called the 119. Or if you find a light plastic Frisbee
Yeah.
at the flight rings on it, it'll say 40 mold right outside the ring. So it'll actually say 40 mold on it.
Yeah.
And try throwing that disc, that Frisbee,
Yeah, I threw it 356.
356 feet. That is so. You have no idea like how ridiculously far that is.
That's a long throw.
That's a.
And that did not. Well, that was the best throw in the tournament, but in the finals, I took fifth.
Yeah, but
Which
that
was
no, and I want to
disappointing.
I can't express this strongly enough. That is not a. That was really far for that time.
That was really far.
No, that was really, really, really far. Because the thing is that meant that's throwing a high speed golf disc speed wise, 600 feet, for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Except it requires more spin relative to speed than a high speed disc. Light plastic Frisbees are harder to throw than golf discs. Sorry, golfers,
No,
don't
are.
shoot me. But
Yeah.
they are. The variance is much smaller. You require more spin, they're more affected by the wind, and they're far more touchy on angles. There's no margin for error.
If you watch a Frisbee player play disc golf, we approach it a little differently. I mean, we love Anheuser approaches. I mean, all these Heiser approaches to every shot. I just love throwing something
Right.
a little understable, and I mean, because it's a similar shape to the kind of shape that I would throw with, a different kind of a disc.
Yeah, well, it's so much different. This is the thing that I got to be a part of this because I started in '76, but I started
Right.
playing every day in '81. the beveled edge discs came out in '83.
Right.
And I was in Southern California, so I was at the epicenter of,
Right.
right? And so what I got to see was the minute beveled edge discs came out, a large percentage of Frisbee players didn't adapt to throwing differently, and they just dropped off the map. Because if you threw a golf disc, the way you threw a Frisbee, you couldn't compete with a disc golfer throwing a golf disc like a golf disc. Like, you're throwing from here, you're putting more spin on it, you're throwing across your belt line, which is exactly how you throw a Frisbee.
Right. Yes.
And the players that didn't adapt, like, it was obvious who the Frisbee players were, like even in the late 80s, they were not competitive. But there are other players that did adapt. And the ones that adapted, they had a weapon. They could.
Oh, you can do things. I mean, yeah. I
But
feel
it's that much different.
I feel that I have a lot of. I can finesse a disc differently than somebody who's just played disc golf.
For sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. It's a whole different skill set.
Yeah.
And so you've seen. So what do you think about? What do you think when you see the level of play that disc golfers are doing at the highest level?
Well,
I mean,
these are phenomenal athletes. I mean,
Right.
that's all there is to it. And of course, we would have had that kind of distance. I would love to have had the discs when I was younger. But the putting and the work that goes into the putting and the consistency of approaches and the consistency of getting the right angle for distance, I mean, is phenomenal. I mean, it's top level disc play. We had players who could have done that if we'd had the tools for it.
100%.
But it's comparable. I mean, it's the same level of dedication to the sport and practice and skill.
Yeah,
Same level.
I would say the biggest difference and whenever people want to compare eras, I don't even like comparing eras because it just changes everything. They say, well, what about the players in this era? Well, when players have been playing for 5 years versus people that have been playing for 20 years, it's 5 versus 20. I mean, how do you compare that?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
it's like we start literally there's a certain age and you play for 5 years. You're not a major leaguer. But that doesn't mean that given 15 more years, you wouldn't have been there.
Right. Sure.
So when it's apples to oranges. It's a fun conversation. But people God, Van Miller and Youngman and Kirkland and then the control that Snapper Pearson and Mark Horn and Tom Monroe, stupid. They're at the highest level of disc sports, and I think they get a little bit dismissed because of the era, and it's not fair.
Interesting. I don't talk to a lot of people who try to compare the two, so I would not have thought that. Well, because I played with all those
They
guys.
get respect.
Okay.
But there's also a level of, but they couldn't compete today.
Oh, let me settle down. I would not agree with that because I'm a pretty good disc golfer. At 67, I can throw 350 to 400. I am accurate. I don't practice much, so I don't putt.
At 67 years
perfectly.
old. Yeah.
But I play this course quite a bit, so I'm very familiar with it. But this layout, I've had good success. Not quite your level success, but I've had good success
Right.
playing this course.
Yeah.
I would like to, at the 40 age group run, I'd have been near the top middle of the road if I'd played.
Yeah.
And I'm a Frisbee player.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I don't play enough disc golf and practice enough disc golf to call myself a disc golfer. I'm a Frisbee player who plays disc golf.
Yeah. So I to this day call myself a Frisbee player.
Yeah.
I chose overall tournaments over golf tournaments, but there wasn't enough overall tournaments. I couldn't make it.
Yeah.
And I could make a living playing disc golf.
Well, and you're a great disc golfer.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
To this day, I will play double disc court before I disc golf if given the choice.
Is that right? Okay.
Oh yeah, 100%. Double disc court is
great.
my favorite game to play, hands down, for sure. And I like calling myself a Frisbee golfer because it pays homage to the generation the giants whose shoulders the sport was built upon.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's my way of connecting, because I am like almost the only bridge right now out here between these two generations.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and
Sure.
and so
That's putting things out there. I mean, there are some players,
there's a place,
but they're not speaking out and building the bridge. And you're building the bridge.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
important to me, because like our sport exists because of the people that came before it, and people like you. I mean, like there's, and you are a metaphor for many players like you of that era. That if you didn't exist, I don't exist. I'm in a cubicle right now, wanting to blow my brains out because, like, I'm not out there playing frisbee golf every day. Boy, that's a horrible thing. Let's not misinterpret that one, and like no ugly comments. But like, I get to do what I do that makes me happy because the people that laid the ground. That's why, like, I was so excited when I talked. Like, you were talking to me, and you're like, you went to IFT this year. I'm like, what? And you're like, you said you won IFT.
Yeah, we won it.
And I was just like, and by the way, there's some motorcycles driving by. Kids these days with their long hair and their rock and roll music. And am I right?
Oh, absolutely.
Protesting the war.
I tell you.
My God, if they should get a crew cut and join the army.
What is this world coming to?
I know these kids these days. All right, so final question I want to ask you about.
Sure.
So, and we'll give the. I think they're just about done. All right, so what do you think about? Because frisbee was the counterculture sport. Well, I would say it's the countercultural sport because surfing and skateboarding also kind of grabbed their little piece of like counterculture sports.
And a little bit of hacky sack.
A little bit of hacky sack, a little bit of hacky sack. But we were counterculture sport. We are not counterculture anymore.
Oh, no.
We are absolutely mainstream
No. Yeah.
and getting more mainstream. Good
Well,
thing or bad thing?
You think so. I'm not. I speak to people my age, and some of them understand disc golf, and some of them still think of disc golf as spend some time in the park, smoke a little marijuana, drink a little beer. Not everybody.
It's in a transition,
It
but
is, yes.
if it's not there today, it'll be there a week from Tuesday.
Yeah,
It's mainstream.
Yeah. There are enough people, I would agree.
Good thing or
has-
bad thing?
Oh, it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I am all for professional sport, because you can play backyard disc frisbee golf. You can go. I go out with my kids on, once a week, maybe more often if we can, and we play disc golf, but we play frisbee golf also. I mean, we're having a good time. We're competitive. We try to beat each other. It's completely no pressure. And we play professionally, but we don't play professionally. And you can have the professional level. You can have these people that we're seeing here today playing and having it be an important professional level competitive sport. And I don't think that hurts it any. I don't think it hurts it to have that. I don't think it hurts it to have professional ultimate frisbee leagues. And have college teams, and then have club teams, and then have kids playing at recess.
Right.
I don't think any of this development, to the highest levels, hurts a sport necessarily.
That's fair. Yeah, I always think it's both, because I love where the sport's coming. I love that there's a tour. I love all the people that are making a living at the sport, not just competing, but pro shops and teachers and manufacturers, and like I love all of that. When people talk today about how we're just this big disc golf family, if they weren't around decades ago, they have no idea the family that we were when we were smaller and we were outcasts and we were all misfits. there was a camaraderie and a family that it will never be the same.
There
again.
is a connection that you get when you're
the only
all fit into a category.
Yeah.
And yes,
and that's
true.
the only part that I miss. And because I'm so not money driven, like I love that. But I'm very careful not to be the old man who says, back in my day it was better. Like, no, it's not better. It's better now. And in 90% of the ways, it's definitely better today.
Well,
But we have lost that.
I don't associate. That's not the right turn of phrase. I don't know the top disc golfers. I know you. I've met you. I've known of you certainly, and you're from a similar generation and certain similar way of playing. So, talking with you and discussing things with you, I have a sense of what a professional disc golfer is like, but I can't tell you what it would be like for me to try to interact with the top pro players. So I don't know how the idea of a family and everybody together is at the core of it the way you do.
Well, what I'm referring to is like when you went, like no one ever paid for hotels. You always stayed at people's houses.
Right.
And you didn't have to know anybody in the town. You called it, like, you know. And by the way, you can still do that to this day. People will put you up. But that was more like staying at people's houses was our Facebook.
Yeah.
Like when you went and traveled, like that was your social networking. Was everybody at the Kansas City Wide Open? And by the way, the same 9 people stayed at the same person's house, and they have for the past 25 years. And now 7 of the 9 of us can afford nice hotels, but we still sleep on the floor.
It's funny you said that.
Pre-COVID.
At the Lansing Disc Golf Scene website, I saw somebody who was coming into town for this event who wanted to stay someplace, and I was about ready to offer. I didn't know who it was,
right,
to come spend the night at my place, but he got accommodations before I had a chance. But that's still going on at some level.
No, it definitely exists,
but
it's not.
It's not the way it was. No, I remember crashing in so many different places to go play Ultimate or Guts or whatever. I mean, it was a whole different thing.
I'll tell you what, some of the old, I got a funny story for you. Some of the old, like this is the old school mindset. So I'm traveling with my girlfriend. We happen to be in her Jeep. So we are at the tournament this last Sunday. After the tournament, the Jeep, after a seminar I ran, whatever, the Jeep at the course wouldn't start.
Okay.
And and this is in Grand Rapids, and I have a seminar the next day in Detroit. So I need to get this Jeep running that day. This is last week, right? And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I tell her, I'm like, not a problem. I post the Grand Rapids page, and I say, hey, my Jeep's broken down. I got a seminar tomorrow. Does anybody know anything about Jeeps? And I post to the page. Well, while we're going, me and her and a couple other people, we decided to go out to eat. So it's going to take a few minutes for people to see the post.
Sure.
So we go out to dinner. Guy messages me on Facebook so I can help with your Jeep. I don't know who it is. Okay. That doesn't surprise me. I posted, fully expected that to happen, right? So, but what tripped her out was we were at the restaurant. He says, I'll come by and take a look at it. And I'm like, well, I'll be at the restaurant for a little bit. And he says, oh, would you mind if I just come by the restaurant and grab your keys? I said, sure, absolutely. So he comes by the restaurant. I've never met this guy before, never talked to him. I don't know who he was. Yeah. He comes by the restaurant. He texts me. I walk out front, toss him the keys to my Jeep, say, cool, we'll be finished with dinner in about 30 minutes. And she's like, did you just hand the keys to my Jeep? Yeah. And I'm like, I go, trust me, this is the way our world works.
Yeah.
Like, that still exists, but I don't know if that's going to be for much longer.
Okay, I understand. Yeah.
but it's 10 years ago, like that was
it.
You don't even, I never even question it. So,
yeah.
But anyways, by the way, the guy texts us 20 minutes later, yeah, Jeep's running,
That's great.
Yeah, and so that was it. So, but that's the old school mentality. Like, of course I'll toss my keys to the Jeep. He's a disc golfer.
Yeah.
Maybe that was bad, but it worked out.
Well, anyway.
So how do your kids golf?
Oh, yeah. 2 of the 3.
Are they good?
Yeah, they can. Yes, they're very good.
Yeah. Cool. Well, then I wish them happy, successful. Tell them to watch my videos. I got some good stuff on there. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. It's an honor. Multiple-time world champion, Hall of Fame member of the Guts Hall of Fame nominee to the Ultimate Hall of Fame. And if you like the history of disc golf, subscribe to my channel. There's going to be a lot more where this came from. Thanks again, man.
Yep, thank you.
Beautiful. That's awesome. Wow, it's so good.
All right.
And, yep, that's a beautiful time.